just basically saying that he's going to be looking to cut expenditure by 300 billion rand over the 2021 to 2024 fiscal year, over 3 years. 300 billion rand, that's how much he wants to cut the budget by, or the spending by. He also expects a shortfall of revenue for this fiscal year, that is the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year, of 313 billion rand. So he's almost trying to equalize, if we can say that. Of course, he continues to support those who are less vulnerable, basically confirming that indeed that social relief of distress grant will continue to be given until the end of January. And he indicated that 6.8 billion rand would be transferred from one place to another. Right, I'm joined now by somebody from the DA. Hello there, sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, we're live on air and I'm very overwhelmed indeed. Please just introduce yourself. I know that you're Mr. Jordan somebody, but please do tell us who you are and just give us your...
Jordan somebody indeed.
Yes.
Jordan Hill-Lewis.
Thank you so much, sir. Please do tell us what your immediate reaction is on the midterm budget. We know that you are very vocal on it, as you are in the economic division of the DA.
Thanks so much. It's nice to be with you. I think there's two key takeaways for me, or that I'd like to focus on right now. The first is the bailout of South African Airways. I think that is a critical failure, I'm afraid. The Minister has made this a matter of principle many years. He's been warning the country and promising that there will be no further bailouts, and he has retreated on that. He's abandoned that commitment, and there will be another 10.5 billion on top of the 16.5 they got in February. That's unacceptable given the pressure and suffering that so many South African families are feeling right now. The second retreat that the Minister made today was from his so-called active scenario from July. You will remember that well. And that commitment only lasted 3 months, because today he said actually the active scenario will not be achieved. We won't stabilize debt by 2023. Actually, it'll only be by 25-26, and it'll be another trillion rand with a T in debt. Now, what that means practically for ordinary South Africans is that we are spending so much more on interest that we are going to be cutting into things like police, healthcare, higher education. All of those things are being cut in today's budgets. And I heard in your introduction about support for the vulnerable, but actually crime is a crisis in this country. The police budget's being cut by 2.5 billion today, all to pay debt and to pay for SAA. And we think that is totally unacceptable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jordan Lewis.
Thank you very much.
Okay, super. If I may take your mic, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Now I'm joined by the ACDP representative just to give us his thoughts on what's come out of the budget. Sir, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, from the ACDP's perspective, we are deeply concerned about the lack of stewardship when it comes to dealing with government resources. The spiraling government debt levels up to 5.5 trillion is totally unacceptable. And we see the public outrage that has been expressed by the high levels of fraud and corruption, particularly now with the COVID-19 and, of course, state capture and corruption. We have to start collecting the stolen funds and ensuring that those that are guilty of corruption are locked away. At the moment, when you look at the strict fiscal consolidation path that the Minister is setting out, it will require billions and billions of rands to pay the debt service costs, which crowds out the much needed economic reforms that we need, social reforms that we need. So we are saying we need an economic recovery plan to be instituted as a matter of urgency. This will result in economic growth, which will result in greater revenue being collected, and that then will balance the budget. But at the moment, it is a great concern of ours that the fiscal consolidation path has been extended when it should have been brought in, and we should have seen fiscal consolidation earlier. It is postponing the inevitable, and that is what the Minister is concerned about, and that is a sovereign debt crisis. We've got to do everything to avoid that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Okay, now I'm joined by Mr. Mkwangwa. He's from the UDM. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Your immediate reaction to the budget speech, please.
Well, the government's priorities are upside down if you look at it. You have a government that calls on civil servants, it calls on public representatives to make sacrifices to take a pay cut over the next few years, which is fine. We're prepared to enter into that discussion, but the very same government decides to actually give more than 10 billion rands to SAA as a bailout package, which means that it's almost like a provider of a family, of a father who decides to buy a Christmas tree when the family doesn't have bread and butter on the table. The other concern for us is that if you look at the country's finances, look, our debt to GDP ratio is expected to stand at about 95% in 2023-2024. Look at the debt service cost of 343 or just almost 350 billion rands during that very same period. It means that for the next 10 years or so, we're going to spend more money servicing our debt, the debt costs, rather than being able to spend them on the social wage. This has to do, obviously, with what we've been warning government over the years to say they eroded the fiscal space unnecessarily over the past 10 years. But the problem with that is that there was no value for money. Try to show me programs or projects that we have managed to done successfully with the more than trillion rands that we've borrowed over the past couple of years or 10 years since 2008. You will not see anything. Even if there's something on the ground, it's been done shortly. It had to be redone at some point. So it's a management issue. So
you're not satisfied?
No. This is just, I mean, it was full of sound and fury, but lacking in detail and lacking in the true sense of the word, in the plan that's going to turn around South Africa.
Thank you, sir, for
Much
your time.
Obliged to you.
Super. Mr. Ngosi Buthelezi, if you could come over. Okay, just observing protocols. Thank you, sir, for joining us. If we could just get your immediate reaction to the budget speech.
In fact, the starting point by the minister, where he quoted former President Mandela giving us hope, showed that there's something serious that is to come. The reality is that the unemployment rate is very high, our economy is like shrinking, and there is no real brighter future ahead of us. But we were happy to have him touching on some of the other issues, in particular the money that will be given to the land bank, because as the IFP we always champion the need for the poor of the poor in the deep rural areas, because agriculture is very important. But as the IFP, we didn't hope that the minister will pour so much money into SAA, regardless of the fact that they want to resettle the company. But we have been expecting him to speak on the lines of bringing a private partner, because government has failed to take care of that state-owned entity.
And just in terms of the budget in broad terms, did you think that it did well in terms of balancing our debt situation?
It did not at all, because our debt continues to grow. And that is a very serious problem, because he mentioned himself that we run a risk of getting into a debt trap, which is a serious problem for us as the country. And he didn't speak nothing as to how government plan to stop leakages in the system in terms of corruption, and making sure that these leakages, which are stealing so much money that could service the debt itself, is actually addressed.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you very much. And so now next I'm joined by Sfiso Buthelezi. He's from the ANC, if he's going to come. Yep, he's coming. Mr. Buthelezi, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Can I take that?
Yes, you may. We just wanted to get your immediate reaction to the budget statement, if you could tell us, and you can look directly at me.
We welcome the MTBS presented by the Minister of Finance. Obviously, it's a very difficult budget. The COVID-19 pandemic has disorganized everybody. The world over is under very, very difficult economic conditions. But what is important is that this mid-term budget comes after the President had presented the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. All what we need to focus on now is what the social partners have agreed upon, that is labor, business, civil society and the government. Now we need to implement that plan. Yeah. So where we are, we believe that our way out of this situation is for us to get the economy back to a growth trajectory, so that we can be in a position to create more jobs, get more revenue, deal with the debt to GDP ratio, which is deteriorating, and the primary deficit.
Speaking to opposition parties just now, they seem to be quite disappointed that National Treasury has gone ahead to support SAA with 10.5 billion rand. You know, when is the government going to stop throwing money at SAA? I
think the minister was very clear on the SAA. We have got guarantees. The debts of SAA are guaranteed by government. So we can't be seen to be reneging on those obligations. So first and foremost, it was very clear that we need to do that. We have got debt that we need to pay. We have got a guaranteed debt. That means that once we have said as a government that this debt, if this company, if this SOE can't pay, we are guaranteeing it. If you are not going to do that, it means it was going to be very difficult for you in the future to raise any money from the bond markets.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Buthelezi, for your time. Let me take that
Thank
mic
you,
from you. Thank you so much. Okay, next now we're going to be joined by Willie Madisha. He's from COPE, and he's going to give us his view on what's going on. Thank you so much, Mr. Madisha, for joining us. Your reaction to Tito Mboweni's midterm budget, please.
I must say that we are extremely disappointed, because what he said is what has been said over the past 20 years. You know, when they spoke about the RDP as Icasa, new growth path, etc. And there has not been any implementation. That is why we are where we are at the moment. Poverty, etc. There is no implementation. They don't have the capacity. Secondly, unemployment rate in our country is more than half the population. Now, he says over the next coming 10 years, they will have created 1 million jobs. Now, that does not say anything. It means they disregard the creation of jobs. Only 100,000 people will be implemented, and that is extremely wrong. Now, the other point that we want to raise is that if you want to talk about the growth path,
yes,
you've got to have what we believe is the welfare kind of state. But then what they are doing is to make sure that our people simply get those 300 rand, 350 rand, but no jobs. But then that, as I say, will create a very serious problem, and we will not go anywhere altogether. Now, the other thing is that they insist that they must just go on and borrow and borrow and borrow, and yet there is a lot of money, lots and lots of resources in South Africa. They are mines, but then what they do is to take these resources overseas and then thereafter go and buy what they have taken there. The products they go and buy, and we lose a lot of money. So we are not getting anywhere altogether.
Thank you, sir, for your feedback on the budget.
Thank you very
so much. That was Mr. Willie Madisha. Now I'm joined by Mr. Groenewald. He's from FF Plus, just to give us his view on the budget. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Just give us your immediate reaction to the budget, please.
Well, firstly, I want to put it very clearly. As far as I'm concerned, the minister is in checkmate. If you look, for instance, the projected deficit on the budget with mature loans are going to be 770 billion this year alone. If you look at the gross debt of the government, we're talking about 3.9 trillion rand increasing to 5.5 trillion by the end of this medium term.
Yes.
The service cost alone of that debt at the moment is 233 billion annually, increasing to 355 billion. So there's no movement for the minister. And what we can't understand is that there is a bailout of 10.4 billion for SAA, where he is on record, where he said, well, there is no money. It's quite correct, there is no money. But what he did then is that he took some money, as he calls it, a conditional grants, which is mainly for local government. And the government on local level is the big problem. They don't have enough money for water, for sanitation. So the minister is taking money for water and sanitation, giving to the SAA. And you can ask yourself, who are the people really flying SAA? So we say that he should have just stopped it and said, anybody who wants to take SAA, they can take it. The other big problem is the salary or the wage bill of government. He said that they will have to cut it with 160 billion. He didn't give a final figure in the end. But what he did is he is taking 14.1 billion from the educational department for decreasing the wage bill. But what I can't understand is the president a couple of weeks ago announced that 200,000 assistants for educators are going to create that jobs for them. So he's going to give 200,000 more people into the education department, but he's taking 14.1 billion from their salary. It just doesn't make sense. The minister is in checkmate and is only moving the chairs on the top deck of the Titanic.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. It's Mr. Groenewald. He's from FF Plus. As you can hear, a lot of dissatisfaction right now about the budget. Not really much positive feedback except from the ANC. Now I'm joined by ma'am just to give us her reaction. Thank you very much, ma'am. If you could introduce yourself and tell us your reaction to the midterm budget, please.
My name is Phemi Majotina. I'm the Chief Whip of the African National Congress.
Thank you very much. And your reaction, please, ma'am?
I welcome the speech by the minister. This speech is taking us forward. It gives us hope, because out of the speech, you could hear that there is a budget that is meant for infrastructure investment. And through infrastructure investment is where we're going to create more jobs, is where we're going to reach out to poor in rural areas for better facilities, but also we need sustainable jobs so as to take people out of the grant and give them sustainable work. That's what we are looking for. And as ANC, we think this is complementing what the president have said, because out of the speech by the president, or the address, the president was saying these are the following things that are going to do, but that needed money. Therefore, this budget is supplementing exactly the action plan of how president is going to implement what he committed. Yes,
but of course the major thing that's coming out from opposition parties is their unhappiness with the giving of 10.5 billion rand to SAA, and of course the minister says obligations have to be observed, but in the February budget, when he was giving over 16.4 billion rand to SAA over the medium term, he said that's it, we don't have enough. But now suddenly the story's changed.
Yes, the story has changed because there are employees, there are obligations that were made some time ago, and you cannot just cut off without observing those obligations. This is a rescue plan. We are not resuscitating SAA. There will be a new airline, but you have to round off SAA and pay all the outstanding debts. That is what this money is meant for. And as Parliament, we're going to do our robust oversight to check each and every cent to avoid what has happened on COVID-19. So we have strengthened our oversight role as Parliament.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Super. Okay, so now, as you can hear, varying views on the midterm budget. We are going to cross now over to my colleague Arabile Gumede, and as soon as we get more guests, you can come back to us, of course.
Yeah, Nompu, thank you so much for that. Then, of course, it gets very interesting now, right? That is the speech then having delivered by the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. That's his medium-term budget policy statement. A whole host of matters coming to the fore, of course, across the ground. One of the key salient issues has been